So whether you have chosen to speak from day one, you've procrastinated for years, not speaking at all, or you're just simply looking to boost your speaking language practice, this video covers absolutely everything I have discovered in my 10 years of language learning about how to actually start speaking a new language instead of putting it off any longer. Plus, if you want to go even further after this video and you want that calm and confident speaking confidence that lasts, join me inside the Speak Your Language with Confidence Challenge, where you will speak more calmly, more intuitively, and more confidently in just 6 weeks. First, let's debunk one of the biggest language myths out there, which is that in order to speak confidently, you have to be already fluent. So you're seeing all of these people going to random Omegle chat rooms or maybe going up to random people on the street and managing to be confident with other speakers, even with limited knowledge. That is proof that this is possible. But it's not the only way to be confident in a language. And we also have to address that fluency, once we reach that point, is not a level where you never make mistakes again, or you never hesitate, or you never pause to think, right? Fluency is not perfection. In fact, it's simply talking about different topics enough so that you can get by in most situations and having good enough accuracy to get your point across. So we can still speak confidently about different topics without needing to be fluent in talking about them first. So after we have made that first mindset shift, let's now think about setting a conscious intention to choose a speaking focus. So before stepping into your speaking practice, do you want to focus on fluency? Do you want to focus on accuracy? Or do you want to focus on communication? Obviously, we're going to see a little bit of overlapping through all of these 3 focuses, no matter what level you are at. However, especially when we are feeling stuck in our progress, only focusing on one thing, putting the others to the side, is really helpful in honing in on having a specific, measurable metric of your progress over time. So communicating is exactly what it sounds like. We can still communicate and make ourselves understood without accuracy, no errors, or without fluency, which is just the general flow of your sentences, right? You could also do the same thing with having a focus on accuracy. So not focusing as much on communication nor fluency. And then you can also focus just on fluency and put accuracy, no errors, plus communication more to the side. If you are just starting out speaking, I would suggest that you only focus solely on communication first and leave the others aside. It is okay that we're not focusing on fluency nor accuracy today. Let's just take it one step at a time. And you'll also, by doing this method, prove to yourself that confident connection and communication can already happen without having to be so accurate and fluent all the time. The next thing that holds a lot of us back from wanting to speak more is thinking that we need a certain amount of hours or a certain amount of vocab or grammar knowledge in order to speak better, and then we get stuck in what's called the preparation phase before ever stepping out to do what we actually want to do. But it's in this mindset trap that we focus and rely way too much on our resources, right? We often talk about in language learning, especially when we're hitting a roadblock, how out of control sometimes that we feel in our learning, and we feel that we can't direct how we want to direct or get the results that we want to get. Sometimes it is due to the fact of this mindset trap and due to the fact that we are letting these kinds of resources where we are getting the most words or most comprehensible input hours to guarantee this magic ticket to fluency, those resources are actually holding you back, and you need to take the power away from them, right? When we start over relying too much on them to produce a specific result, we forget that we can actually start speaking with a combination of the elements that we'll talk about further in this video. The fact is, resources do help us, but no one resource is going to guarantee that we are actually speaking and producing the language, right? Those are 2 separate things that it is up to us to link together. As a remedy to this mindset trap, take back control of your own speaking practice by choosing what level of fluency you want and where. So remember at the beginning of this video how I said that fluency is basically just how comfortable you are in different topics and communicating with good enough accuracy in most situations about them. So what level of fluency, aka what specific topics do you want to feel confident speaking about? And that is going to be based especially on your personal situation, And even when we are at an intermediate level, but we still feel blocked speaking, I think it's important to also keep in mind there are reasons for both why you feel uncomfortable with certain topics, even though you feel you've mastered other topics that are considered at your level or above that you can be proud of. There's also a reason why your mind might still go blank as a reaction to using your language in a new situation that you haven't before, such as debating someone or giving a presentation. In fact, you probably felt a little bit nervous doing the same thing in your native language for the first time. So again, break down the levels of fluency, aka the different topics that you want to feel comfortable enough to talk about in most situations, and then break down where you want to use that fluency and practice there as much as you can. For example, if you want to have fluency while ordering at a restaurant, then I would definitely do listening practice with noises in the background, because speaking is like 50%, but listening is also the other 50% of a successful speaking interaction overall with a native speaker, right? So really listening to someone else speaking, but in a more authentic environment where everything isn't as clear, will get you even closer to where you want to be. Forcing your brain to do several things at once is a really good exercise for practicing in person what you're also going to have to do if your idea of fluency is being able to just talk about everyday topics with a friend and really use the colloquial slang that you've been learning in your Spanish class, for example. When you yourself are clear on your personal levels of fluency that you want to reach, you're also setting yourself up for seeing your speaking progress once you do get to reach each of those certain levels of fluency. The next essential element for actually speaking confidently is a healthy mindset. Now, we've already talked about mindset a little bit, but even more mindset is necessary in order to truly speak confidently. And this goes outside the scope of this video. So again, do make sure to drop by to see if the Speak Your Language with Confidence challenge is right for you, because we deal with a lot of unblocking those mindset barriers that will, after unblocked, accelerate your results. Now, what are the words that you need to start actually speaking your language? I would make a list of the essential conjunctions. So that would be then, after, before, because, but, so, and. Any sort of essential adverbs, sometimes, often, always, never. Being able to form questions. So any clarifiers that naturally come at the end of questions. In English, this would look like, hey, this is the best food, right? Or, is that so? Etc. Depending on the language, you might also need specific word markers to indicate a question, right? So ma in Chinese, m in Turkish, or in English, you have to use do in order to form questions. And then also as a side note, make sure to note the specific intonations for questions too. In many languages, the voice does go up at the end. We'll also need to know the essential verbs: to be, to go, to have, plus any sort of relevant verbs that are special to your situation and relevant time markers that you might need to use to help others know if you're talking about the past, present, or future. So yesterday, tomorrow, today, now, etc. I would also make sure that you're at least familiar with the basic conjugation of verbs in the language that you're trying to speak. I would also add essential expressions. I need, I want, I would like, I go, I have, I can, plus simple negations. I don't want, I don't need, I won't go. Making questions out of the starters. So do you have, do you need, do you want, do you go? This is, that is, they are, and there is, there are. Some essential nouns I recommend for speaking automatically are man, woman, child, anything that has to do with family. So husband, wife, brother, daughter, plus any relevant ones to your family. Simple places, so world, school, city, house, bank, and any sort of concrete miscellaneous nouns. Problem, question, answer, water, thing, help, friend, food, plus any others that are relevant to you. And I know that our textbooks make it really noun heavy and makes us think that we have to know more nouns than we actually technically do in order to speak confidently. Next up, numbers and cardinal numbers to actually start speaking your language. If you're really in a hurry, only pick the numbers that you need depending on context. So if you want fluency in your introductions, it's probably wise to learn your birth date, your birth year, your age, your spouse's age, maybe if that's relevant, maybe your siblings' ages, etc. If you want fluency at an airport or a train station, for example, learning cardinal numbers so that you can find different platforms or different gates, and numbers in the thousands also might be helpful for flight numbers. Any words or filler words expressing reactions, so that can signal disagreement, agreement, frustration, shock, anger, excitement, right? right? We feel confident when we're speaking and we can actually give a response to whatever is being told. So reactions are also a great way for this to happen. And you can just start with a few. We don't have to go overboard here. Also, if you find an expression where you can tack on the same word and combine it with a lot of adjectives, then that is also really helpful. So that would look like wie in German, right? Wie schön, or che in Italian. So che bello, che delizioso. Speaking of essential adjectives, what you'll probably need in order to automatically start speaking are to learn the basic opposites. Again, we don't need a ton, just the essentials plus any that are relevant to your situation. So important, not important, mean, nice, good, bad, tasty, bad, near, far, positive, negative, expensive, cheap, any relevant colors, early, on time, late, and pretty. And also if there are any ways to intensify or lessen the strength of your adjectives, and it's an easy construction to do, then you can also add that in. So in English, that would look like adding more for intensifying the adjective or less to weaken the adjective's strength. Next, days of the week, seasons, and months of the year are always good to know, and cultural expressions. Also here, you don't need a ton, but just think about really small things that you can say that the other person will automatically know. With this, we're making the mindset shift too, that we can manipulate the vocabulary, even though it's limited, in ways that will still help us speak confidently, right? Having a limited vocabulary is not the barrier to speaking as much as you think it is. And really, all of the essential vocabulary that I listed in the previous chapter, you can think about them as puzzle pieces. So they really all come together in order to form a basic idea. Again, grammar doesn't need to be perfect, as I said before. We're not focusing on accuracy being perfect, nor fluency. Our main focus is always going to be communication here. So especially for really getting confident using a limited vocabulary, you can always try the strategy of using magnets. This is a variation of a haptic exercise that sometimes English teachers will use with their students to help them better visualize and physically move pieces of the language around in order to see just how flexible just a few words can go in order to change the meaning. And you can experience, yes, I'm limited here to what I can use, but we can be flexible in using what we already have. I never discourage anyone from learning more vocabulary, but as we said before, that can really get us stuck in thinking, oh, I have to learn so many words, when actually you can probably already start speaking and giving yourself a chance to prove to yourself that you can get your main ideas across for speaking anyways, with what you have right now, right in this instant. That's what we're gonna have to do anyways in conversation, is work with what we have in our minds. So we might as well just practice like it will be right now. I will say this is also a reason why dabbling in different languages gives you an advantage to speaking fluently, even if you aren't already fluent yet. You are exposed to how more languages work and the many possibilities to how ideas can be formed in different languages. That also gives us more ideas in the moment for how we can do the same in the language we're currently working on. Again, that's kind of just a side note and encouragement to keep on dabbling in languages if you are, but if you aren't, it's just a suggestion and not mandatory. Language is ultimately just a tool that we use, and it's much more flexible than we initially think it is, even if we find that our vocabulary, quote unquote, isn't big enough yet to speak. Now, what grammar do we need to learn first in order to start speaking? Remember, we do need some of it, but we don't need all of it. Know the formal expressions in your language, just to stay safe, right? And just maintain that cultural etiquette, knowing the formal you conjugation in German, French, Italian, etc. Know basic word order. So where does the subject, verb, and object come in a sentence? When do you add adverbs and time expressions in that order? Verb use. So definitely know of the essential verbs we already named in the essential vocabulary section, the past, present, and future of them, plus any sort of relevant pronouns. So I, you, he, she, me, her, plus any sort of sentence patterns that are relevant to your needs. Next thing we want to do is start building our own vocabulary list. Think about your reasons for learning your target language. What scenarios and contexts do you want to develop your fluency in? So one of those scenarios will definitely be being able to talk about yourself and your life. So you think, how would I describe my life story to someone else? Of course, the details that you give about this will grow as your language skills improve, but it is great to add this vocab to your personal list because it has a direct relevancy to you. And as many studies have shown, you remember more of what is more relevant and personable to you. The second thing to really figure out, okay, what else do I put on my my list is thinking about what your passions, interests, strong likes, or even what things that you hate are, right? When we have that emotional connection to a word, a phrase, etc., then we're more likely to remember it. And the third thing to ask yourself for adding to this list is, what might your current resource, textbook, program, app, etc. be missing? For example, when I talk about my family, which is usually just an A1, A2 level, I probably won't get in a textbook. I'm adopted, right? Because that is an important part of my personal story. So I would definitely add that to my personal vocabulary list. Now, what do we do when we still go blank when we're speaking? I always advise to just keep what we're saying simple, right? Sometimes we try to talk in the most advanced or the most sophisticated way because we want to sound smart in our language. And we might even stop ourselves because we're trying to do all of that all at once. We forget how hard our brains are actually working sometimes in order to produce our language. So I always advise to keep it simple with what you know in the moment when speaking. If your mind goes blank when you're trying to think of an adjective, then always think about the opposite of what you want to say if the actual specific word isn't coming to you. So if you are forgetting the word for a positive, then you can also say, hey, it's not negative. You can also use other languages. I found that this was really helpful for me when I was in Tunisia and they all use Arabic and French, and I was really trying to stay away from using English. And so when I was, for example, giving my telephone number out, I forgot the word for 0 in French, but for some reason could remember it in Arabic. So we just went with that. You can also try dancing around what you want to say. So you don't have the exact word that you want to say, but you have just enough to be able to describe what you want to say and help the speaker understand. You can also combine it with any sorts of hand gestures or any sorts of noise effects, other body language. You can even draw a picture, show an image, show an object if it's relevant to what you want to say in order to only stay in the target language. And you can also simply say, hey, I forgot what I wanted to say, let's just move on. Another thing I recommend to actually start speaking your language is understand the culture of that language. And what I mean by this is understanding the context around what people are saying. Because even if you understand the concrete words that someone else might be telling you, they might actually be communicating something completely opposite of what they just said, right? So this can look like Americans. When they ask you, hey, how are you? They don't actually want to know how you are. And if you give them a really long spiel of how your day was, they'll probably look at you really funny. However, in Germany, when you ask, hey, how are you? Then Germans will understand that as you wanting to genuinely know how they are, and they will give you a whole spiel of the day and they won't think that it's weird. Okay, so there are a lot of context clues that we need to be aware of. And the more aware we are of those context clues and of the culture around us, the more confident we produce through speaking and understand our target language. For practicing this, I love doing any sorts of role plays so you can really get the context clues as well as relevant cultural expressions in. You can find debates, you can find vloggers on YouTube who are natives of your target language, street interviews, you can also watch comedians. Now, for making learning pronunciation engaging again, because as we know, listening is like 50% of the probability rate that a whole speaking interaction will go well, right? We have to understand what is being said to us. If we don't, then we can't respond and our confidence might go down. We might also stop ourselves from wanting to speak more because we're afraid that our pronunciation is not perfect. Now, really, language learners generally just need their pronunciation to be good enough. Now, that said, if you do want to work on it more, I always recommend the shadowing method. Now, I love using Pimsleur for this. It is very auditory, and you essentially try to repeat exactly what the native speaker says with the same cadence, rhythm, and intonation over and over until it really sticks in your brain. However, you can also use any other sort of language video on YouTube or podcast that you find and really slow down the speed to practice the pronunciation exactly how it is given to you. You can also drill minimal pairs. Now, this is what the author of Fluent Forever advocated for. When you drill minimal pairs, you're basically focusing on words that differ by just one sound and really starting to notice the differences in those minimal pairs will not only improve your pronunciation, it'll also improve your listening and overall speaking interaction and confidence. Tongue twisters are also really good if you are having trouble pronouncing parts of a really specific word or singular letter. Here, I also recommend you try yourbestaccent.com, where AI will literally create a copy of your voice in your target language, and you can listen back to your own voice with how it would sound with a native-like accent pronunciation, and you can use shadowing from there. And now you have all the tools that you need in order to actually speak your target language. If you are interested in even more ways on how to build your listening comprehension so that it benefits your speaking practice, watch this video here. And or if you're curious about how to maintain speaking practice for multiple languages, this is your video right here. Make sure to subscribe if you have not already, and I'll see you in another video soon.